An intro to the Singularity. Earlier this evening, I took out my Android phone and I brought up an app that searched the Pirate Bay for the Big Lebowski, and I was able to send it home so that I can watch it when I get there. Now that may not. Now a lot of people here, probably a third of the people in this room, knows what that means, and knows how that can happen. And this isn't advancing, Henry. The slides aren't advancing. Oh, there we go. Okay. But this is an indication of how a lot of things are changing for us. A lot of things that seemed very impossible before are changing. So this is what the singularity is. It's a time in the near future when technological advances progress so quickly that human life is irreversibly transformed. It's when computers start assisting in their own technological advances, and really it signifies the end of human civilization as we know it, the end of the human era. And that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit. What happens afterward is really impossible to predict. The picture on the left is a picture from Wall-E. It's about the obese people that really can't walk that are in the seats, and the Terminator, of course, on the other side of the screen. But after that point, we really cannot predict what will happen next as far as our society is considered. This 15 seconds is way longer than I planned. The thing about it is it is inevitable, given what we know about the advances in technology and computing power and things like that. But what's really mind-blowing is that it's probably going to happen within all of our lifetimes. And according to a lot of trends which are out there that a lot of scientists support, you should consider that by 2045, a $1,000 device that you can purchase will have the computing power of 1 billion human brains. And this comes from the exponential rate of change. And on the left is a graph a lot of people have seen. It's the amount of internet hosts. It looks like an explosion about in the mid-90s and late 90s. But on the other side of the screen, there's an exponential curve, which is very tough for us to comprehend. But you can see it's much more of a straight line. And it's how things usually progress. And I have a couple of other examples coming up. This is one which is Moore's Law. Now, we're all familiar with Moore's Law. It states that the speed of computer chips and transistors will double about every 2 years, and that the price of those chips will fall in half by about every 2 years. Now, he did that for transistors, and it's proven to be even faster than that lately. But what this graph shows is that it actually extends through other technologies before transistors came around. And even when transistors reach their limit, it predicts that it will continue to change. And it's mentioned constantly in the mainstream media. I saw just today that in the latest issue of Time magazine, which may come out tomorrow or in a couple of days, there's a massive article about the singularity, very long article. And you can see some other things here. One that's probably very close to us is that within 4 years, IBM predicts that we will never have to forget anything that ever happened to us again. Any picture that was taken to us, where we were, who we talked to, there will be a record of that. This is the last slide, Henry. This is going a little bit too fast for me. No, yeah, this is the very last slide. Let me see if it changes here real quick. Yeah, that's the end. Okay. Yes, I'm missing a whole lot of slides here. Time. We can leave. It's mentioned constantly in the mainstream media. Let's see if we can catch up for 15 seconds. All right, these trends predict overtaking us. This is going back to 1900. This is the exponential growth in computing with the calculations per second. And it predicts, for example, that a $1,000 computer will have enough computing power for one human brain in about 2025, and for all human brains on the surface of the Earth by about 2035. It's not too far in the future. And once again, this uses some exponential trends, which we're pretty familiar with. And this will affect us all personally. Human enhancement and integration is already occurring at faster paces. Think about all the ways that computers, your phone, social media help with your communication, help with your memory, and all of our computation, and how we really can't get along without it in the modern world. And physical integration will become better with more knowledge. It's already happening in the medical field in a lot of different ways. I'll go over a couple of examples in a moment. These are some technologies which are a little bit mind-blowing, which are currently planned. Neural enhancements. There's already some FDA-approved neural pacemakers out there for Alzheimer's patients. And there's scientific papers out there for nanobots that will be in your brain that will help your neurons communicate up to 1 million times faster than they do right now. There's also artificial red blood cells. There's scientific papers which are over 10 years old about those. And on the last bullet, there's been over 300 nanotech conferences just last year alone. And you can consider currently in the medical field, there's artificial prosthetics, hearts, valves, there's cochlear implants, and there's much more coming down the pipe. The FDA is currently considering artificial lungs, artificial kidneys, and many others that are not only will be external to us, but also that we'll be able to walk around with. Not to mention a lot of the drugs that are out there that change our internal biology, from birth control to Viagra. Now, how will this happen? Where are these trends going to, where can you watch for them? They're generally split into three main areas which you can watch, and you can see these mentioned in the news constantly. Those are genetics, nanotechnology, and artificial intelligence, or what some people call robotics. And here's some genetic advances which we've seen recently, which may have just flown by the radar for a lot of people. And that is sequencing DNA, which a lot of us take for granted nowadays in criminal cases, for example. The AIDS virus took about 15 years to sequence that. You can see a few years ago, it took 31 days for the SARS virus. And when the latest swine flu epidemic came by, it took only 24 hours to sequence that. And that trend is continuing. We haven't stopped there. It's continuing to drop. And things we take for granted, such as genetic disease for birth tests and genealogy analyses, are all other indicators of what's coming. This is an example of how the explosion in data that we have available from DNA analyses and tests, which as we continue to analyze these and reverse engineer genes, we can understand human biology much better. And as we do so, we'll be able to change that and influence those in the future and repair them over time. So, and that's a lead into some of the biotech opportunities which are available. Mechanical communication is much, much faster than normal communication, the way our cells communicate with each other. And by enhancing that communication, we can greatly enhance our brain power. There's the ability to repair cells and genes. And the big lesson for this is there's some people that say now, if you live long enough, you can live forever with medical technologies and the way that they're going. Next, I want to talk about nanotechnology a little bit. That's the whole idea of machines and things getting smaller and smaller and smaller that can do common tasks. We can do this. We can see this with our cell phones, with Bluetooth devices, with tons of other things. And it has a lot of implications. But there's also some dark side implications too. And they're so serious, there's military applications, of course, but that the United States government has established a .gov website to discuss nanoethics and to talk about guidance for science in this field. Next is strong AI. There's a lot of things out there, including what I talked about earlier. The last bullet on there talks about IBM creating a supercomputer that intends to compete on Jeopardy soon enough. And AI explosions are just on the horizon through the proliferation of AIs. And things such as Google has said that with 14 photos of yourself on Facebook, they can find you in any other photos. You combine that with a lot of other technologies out there, and things get a little bit scary, but it also shows that there's an explosion of things coming in the future. And anyway, the singularity is something which is a little bit of hard to wrap your brain around, but it's pretty exciting. That's it.